Hey there, welcome back to the Bussedamove YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about windows for our Skoolie, but not just any old windows. These are double paned insulated RV windows. So we're going to tell you how we got them, how we put them in, all of those things. So stay tuned. This is a bittersweet moment for us because we are about to open up the window, but you'll see this and recognize it from our YouTube channel as the Bus Love logo. Bus Love, Bus Love, Bus Love. So have yourself a merry little Christmas and
Bus Love.
Bus Love.
Bye.
Bus Love. Bus Love. As always,
Bus Love.
Bus Love. If all goes well, we'll have Bus Love out of here and a window in there, and which is what we want because we want to get done, but it is going to be sad to see this go as far as our YouTube channel set goes. So as of right now, we have spent one night in a Skoolie, and that night happens to be the worst night I've ever had in my whole life as far as trying to sleep, trying to stay comfortable, and it was a bad deal because the Skoolie that we stayed in had the regular bus windows, and unbeknownst to us, the family that owns this bus, best people in the world, but they forgot to mention that when they stay in the bus in cold weather, that they have curtains and they hang blankets and things like that over the windows, and we didn't have that at our disposal. And it was 32 degrees outside the bus, and with two space heaters running inside the bus, it was about 36 degrees. There was basically no thermal insulation whatsoever in the windows. It just clear glass school bus windows. It was a miserable night, and it just made you think and kind of get sad about the people that don't have access to warm places to sleep at night. And that's a different note, but I'm just saying it makes you think. So we decided that when we went to build our bus that it was gonna have RV windows, and those RV windows would be insulated RV windows. There's not a whole lot of difference between RV windows that are not insulated and RV windows that are, because the R value is very, very similar between the two, but you know, since we're doing it, we might as well do the best that we can do. And the best that we could do is insulated RV glass. And the R value is, from what I've seen, and I feel free, obviously, to correct me if I'm wrong, use the comments, that kind of stuff, send us a message, whatever you gotta do. But from what we've seen, the R value of a regular RV window, I'm saying R a lot, it's just the R value of 1. And so for insulated RV glass, the R value is only a 2. So it's marginally better, but the fact that it's better at all, it was still worth doing based on the terrible night that we spent in a Skoolie and how cold that we were. So that was our decision to go back with insulated glass. Even though it costs more, it just felt like the right thing to do, and I'm very proud that we did. So there's a lot of websites that you can go to when you're looking for RV glass and RV windows. The first one that we found was easyrvwindows.com. We'll add a link in the bottom to that. We don't get anything out of it, but it was just a resource that we found. And you can design any window that you want. You can have a fixed glass, you can have vertical sliders, you can have horizontal sliders, exit windows, insulated, non-insulated. You can even tell them what tint that you want on the glass, and they'll do it, and it's awesome. They were a little pricey. The other part of the form is like the radius, like the curve, and we'll talk about that a little later. But you can choose that even. So if you need to do a direct replacement of something, they have all the tools necessary for that to happen. If you are starting from scratch, they also have all the tools that you need to get whatever size window that you want in whatever configuration that you want. So it's really awesome. We ultimately wound up passing on it because even though they would have been new windows with trim rings and all of that and insulated glass and everything that we wanted, we just couldn't spring it in the budget since we're spending a lot of money elsewhere to try to get the bus as green as possible and as healthy for my wife as possible. We just opted not to spend that much money on new RV windows. So I'll tell you about that in a second. Long story short, we got it from eBay. But a second really great source is Amazon. Amazon has a lot of replacement windows. The main one that they come up with all the time is a teardrop window. meaning it's for a teardrop camper, not necessarily shaped like a teardrop. But Amazon has a few. The problem with the Amazon windows for us is they were not insulated. So if that doesn't matter to you, if you just want the RV window look, and you don't mind the loss of a little bit of thermal protection, then Amazon is a good way to go. And I mean, everybody shops on Amazon now, so I mean, go for it. recpro.com was a great website. Again, we're not getting anything from this. I'm just saying they had a huge selection of windows, and it was really great to see everything that we had. And we actually built a lot of our design off of the possibility of getting windows from recpro.com. When we were buying windows, they didn't have an insulated glass option. Even though they had every other option possible, they didn't have that one. So we ultimately passed on that, but that is still a wonderful resource for getting an RV window, or 2, or 7 in our case. We wound up going to eBay to get our windows, and we found a really great company. I believe they're in Michigan, and I'll put a little title right here if I'm wrong, but I think they're out of Michigan. So the shipping was a little steep on a few of them, but I mean, the main windows that we got are like these guys right here, which are 48 by 35. So I can't blame them for charging a lot because we got 3 of them. But the windows themselves were cheap. I mean, this window would have been ridiculous had we gone with a new one or a new replacement or something like that. We had a company quote of $1,700 just for one of those, and we have 3 of them. And I think all in between all of those, maybe we have $500 between the 3 of them that are this size. And I wouldn't change a thing, man. These windows came and they were awesome. I mean, I believe these were new stock, but they're old windows. So, I mean, there were some quirks, the rubber seals and things like that on some of the little kick-out glass were gone. So we had to do some tweaking, but just the sheer amount of money that we saved by buying them off of eBay, 100% the way to go. So definitely do that. If you found this video because all you want to do is know how to install a window, then we're getting there. And I'm sorry that it's taken so long to get to this point, but here we are. So we're going to talk about how we installed our RV windows. We were fortunate enough to get the trim rings with all the windows that we bought so that we were able to have a pretty decent template to start transferring to the wall. And so we did some measurements and we figured out what is called the rough cut, and that's the square. So like with this window that I keep pointing at, it's a 48 by 35. So we knew that the square was going to be 48 by 35. And side note, windows are measured lengthways. Wait, this is the window. Lengthways first and then height. So the 48 is how long it is. The 35 is how tall it is. So when you're laying out the window on the side of the bus, find a good square point somewhere and then make sure that, like for us, it was the rub rail. So we got a speed square and we put a notch on it, and then we squared it up to the rub rail, and then we made a line here, or a dot here, and moved down to the other side of the 48, and we made another dot, and then we connected that. So that was our line. And then we took a framing square, which is a much larger square, and that's where we started doing our vertical lines. And that really seemed to help out a lot, and it seems to be the way that makes a lot of sense. And then from there, if you don't get lucky with the paint can thing like we did, we had a gallon-sized paint can that was the radius of this window exactly. So we were able to find the 2 square lines and put the radius there, and it was perfect. If you don't have that, you can kick it back to old school days, like when you were in preschool or kindergarten or elementary school. I don't know actually at what level they teach you this, but relief carving. And we just got a piece of butcher paper and we laid it over the frame that was actually to go in the hole, and we took a pencil and sketched along the border. And then you take the paper off and you have a perfect crease and a shade of what the actual arc was. And from there you take scissors, you trim out the arc, and then put it in the 2 flat spots where the corners meet, and then trace it. And I mean, every other window other than these that we actually wound up having to do that for, it was a perfect fit every time. We did 3 other windows just like that, and it worked like a champ. As far as the wooden frame, like this is just 16 gauge sheet metal on the side of the bus, so if it's an 1.5 inch deep window, you have to have something for the internal trim ring to sandwich against. We got actually decking like banisters, like if you're on a deck on your back porch, and the vertical pieces that go between the handrail and where your feet are. Those are about 1.25 inches. and we were able to get those and glue them together, and then the side that wasn't glued we wound up putting through a table saw and trimming it until it was exactly the right size that we need. And it worked out really, really great. So then there's the task of gluing the wood to the metal. If you followed our build, you know that we love us some welding clamps. And we have, I don't even know, like 30 in the barn. So just from various projects over the years, and I think we've even bought another 10 or 15 for this. So we got the wood in place, we got it cut to the right size, and we got it buttered up, all the glue there, so there would be no gaps in the glue. And then one window at a time, we went through and clamped all the way around. And once the glue dried, we were ready to hang the window. And the trim rings weren't really on the windows that we hung first. They just shipped with the windows, and I think they were taped or something, but there were no screws. So we had no concept of what kind of screws that we needed for the window. That actually wound up working to our advantage, because what we later found out is, like, you have the window frame, which has a little trough, and then you have the trim ring, and there's just a little baby screw that goes through there, and like 3 of the threads of the screw, like the screw tip bottoms out in the channel, and only like 3 threads are holding it together. And in hindsight, like, I don't know how RV windows stay in RVs, because it seems like a really dumb way to do it to me, because the system that we wound up doing, and I mean, granted it damages the window for future, but I mean, our windows will never ever fall out of this bus. We wound up getting like a number 12 screw, self-tapping, and we would run through the trim ring into that channel, but then through the channel, and then it would the channel being reinforced, it would let that serve as a sandwich point, and we were able to squeeze the butyl on the outside of the window against the bus, and then the window squeezed really, really, really tight to the point where it was squeezing butyl out of the side, which obviously means it's a good seal. So we were impressed with that, and it looks incredible. And it's rained, I mean, straight up South Georgia monsoons down here since we got these windows in, and it's just absolutely bone dry in here. Like, it is perfect. So that's 100% the way that you should do it. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I know that ours are awesome. What I will say about butyl is the reason we had to pull the windows off a couple of times, we had the one in the front here out 3 separate times trying to figure out the process of it. And basically we didn't have enough butyl. Like, I've seen some of these videos on YouTube that are like, oh, people say to double up, but I only put 1. So like, we just didn't want to overdo it, because we kind of didn't want it to be ugly on the outside. But then we realized that if anything squeezes out, you kind of want it to squeeze out. And then if anything does squeeze out, all you have to do is trim along with a razor knife, and it comes right off, and you know for a fact that it's sealed, and it's sealed very, very well. So toward the end, we were actually putting a triple layer of butyl, especially on the framed windows. Like, on the frameless windows, the squeeze is a little flatter, you know, like the piece of the window that comes up against the side of the bus is a lot more flat, and it works out. So you don't really need that much there. But like on a framed window where there's like the actual kind of bezel kind of thing around, like on the frame, we did 3, sometimes 4 layers. We would go a 4th layer in the corners just to make sure the corners were good. But then on the sides, we did as much as 3 layers, because we wanted the butyl to be like, if the channel is here, we wanted the butyl to be more than flush, like, so there was a lot of butyl in there. I don't know if that's making sense. Like, if chances are, if you're watching this video, you know what I'm talking about, because you're looking at it trying to figure it out. So basically, like, in the framed window, there's the cup, like the bezel that is the frame. We figured out that if you make the butyl come beyond that hump and flush, when it squeezes, it's gonna compact all the butyl into there. So like, there is no chance ever of a leak. And I mean, fingers crossed, but I mean, I don't see personally, I don't see how that there would be a leak. Wish us luck on that. And so one of the biggest things that we figured out with the framed windows is that there's weep holes. And if you get used windows, be sure to do this. And even if you don't have a replacement window, like, this is just a good idea to do anyway. There's little slits or little holes in the frame of a framed window. and water comes down the glass, goes into the window frame, and then there's channels that route the water out of those holes. The problem is if the water gets backed up in there because those holes are plugged or clogged or whatever, you can have a real problem because then the water backs up over the window frame and can go into your vehicle, and nobody wants that. So what we wound up doing is we got an air compressor out with the blow nozzle and we blew all sorts of junk out of there, and then the weep holes work perfectly. So definitely do that. Whether you're maintaining an RV or a Skoolie or whatever, if your window has weep holes, you owe it to yourself and to your car and to your family's health and everything to blow out the weep holes so that you don't have water in your car. You gotta have that. So when it comes down to it, there's just a couple of steps. You cut your hole, you trim the hole, glue the wood in there, and then once everything is good and cured and dry and all of those things, you put as much butyl as possible on there with the intention of squeezing it out and trimming it off. And then you just cinch the trim ring from the inside as tight as possible. And a side note, pro tip there, like we actually had scaffolding on the outside of the bus and somebody was inside. If the screw was here in the trim ring, somebody was on the outside, it was me, putting all of their body weight into the window behind the screw. So the screw didn't have to work to pull so hard on the aluminum because you were actually pushing from the outside. So you're doing the compacting and the drill is just helping and then doing the final secure. And then go around, trim it off. And if you're building from scratch like we are, obviously we have raw walls and stuff on the inside, it wouldn't hurt to run a water hose and maybe even some pressurized water, you know, to simulate driving, and actually kind of spray off the outside of the windows and just see what you have. And if it starts to leak in this state that we're currently in, you know, like that's an easy fix. You just take the window back out like we did a couple of times and redo it until you don't have that. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you so much for being a part of our journey. We love being in the Skoolie community. We love being in the YouTube community. So definitely ask that you like this video. Definitely subscribe if you haven't subscribed, because we're always trying to put out content that matters and that is relevant and that helps people. Because a lot of the things that we're learning to do, we learned right here on YouTube, and we're trying to put our spin on it and give it right back and help people that are coming up behind us. And if that's you, thank you so much for being here. If you're just kicking the tires on the Skoolie thing, like, we love that too. We'll share as much as you want to see. So that's it. Thank you so much for being a part of our lives. And until next time, be good to each other and bust love.